What's going on, Badger fans? We continue finishing up our look at the 2024 recruiting class player by player, what we like, look at some film, what did the experts say. We got Rob Booker on the show today. Rob Booker is the big 6'5", 6'6", 210-ish, 215-ish, 220-ish pound tight end out of Waunakee, Wisconsin. Y'all know the story. Originally committed to Wisconsin, decommitted, committed to UCLA, recommitted to Wisconsin. I'm glad they stayed on him. Like, I had him on the show. I really enjoyed talking to him. I like his game a lot. I love his game a lot. So I'm glad the Badgers stayed on him. I know some fans get a little weird with commitment, decommitment, recommitment, stay loyal. I'll tell you, 90%, 95% of those fans don't care when the Badgers go and flip somebody. I'm just gonna say it. Like, it doesn't matter to me. Like, those things don't matter to me. Um, when I was that age, I wasn't making decisions all the time that were concrete. I don't make decisions all the time that are concrete now, right? Like, I've switched jobs, I've made a decision and gone back and thought about it and reconsidered. And I talked about this a little bit with I'm trying to remember who it was. I don't remember who it was actually, but it does take some maturity too to come back and say, I don't think that was the right decision. Oh, with Leon Lowry, right? I said it takes some maturity to come back and say, maybe that wasn't the right decision, and I do think this is the place for me. So I'm glad they stayed with it. I'm glad Booker came back to Wisconsin, stayed in state. We talk about in-state recruiting a lot. This is a big get. The tight end room needs this addition of athleticism, right? You look at kind of the guys in that room. I love Grant Steck. This is a different type of athlete than Grant Steck. I like Jackson Magana. This is kind of a different type of athlete than him as well. JTC Greaves is in that room. I like his upside, but I think Booker gives you a little bit more juice at that spot. And quite frankly, you need weapons. We talk about this all the time, not just when Brian Smith is on the show. You need weapons in college football. You need guys who can go out and create mismatches. If Booker hits the upside, he's one of those guys. He's one of those guys that can create mismatches. Consensus 3-star. He was, I believe, a 4-star earlier in the cycle, and he kind of dropped down a tick. What do we like about him? We talk about the three things we like about every prospect. The first one is just the athleticism. Like, he's an easy mover. He's fluid in space. He's athletic. He can high point balls. He's got height, wingspan, verticality, speed. Like, he's just a really good athlete in a 6'6" frame. So you start there. He fits a lot of what you want from an athletic move tight end that can get down the seam, that can create mismatches on linebackers because they can't quite run with him, and then can out physical defensive backs and safeties. He gives you some of that hybrid ability, which is really nice to have in this offense. The second thing I like about him is I think he complements the other people, and specifically Grant Steck, really, really well, right? Because Grant Steck is more of your earth mover, your pile driver. Now, he can catch, he can split out too. Don't get me wrong. Don't mistake it. If Grant Steck is watching, or if a Grant Steck fan is watching, he can go out and get it too. But I think the two of them complement each other really well. Like, I mentioned it on the Steck show. You imagine running 22 personnel. You come out with Booker and Steck. You could run the ball, or you can split them both out wide. And it's just really tough on a defense, man, because you have to come out in base. You have to come out with linebackers if the other team has two tight ends. But how are you going to cover these two dudes in space with linebackers? That's assuming they hit, and that's assuming things come together. But that's kind of the vision with players like this. You create mismatches. You make it really hard on defensive coordinators. So I like the fact that they complement each other really well. And then the last thing with Booker is I think there's a ton of upside here. This is one of the highest upside players in this class if it all comes together, because he talked about when he came on the show, he needs to get better blocking. But if he can become an adequate blocker, this is like a Lance Kendricks type upside player. A different player. Kendricks was a little smaller, not as tall, but a little more explosive, I think. But he is that type of NFL receiving tight end upside. And we talk about all the time. How do you climb the rung in college football? You get more NFL type athletes, and you need them everywhere. You need NFL athletes everywhere. This is a guy who, if it all comes together, can be that type of difference maker at tight end. I'm really excited he came back. Let's put the film on. Let's watch it. I think there are areas for him to improve on, but I think a lot of the natural things he does are just unique to the position. They're unique to high school football, and they'll be unique to the Wisconsin Badgers if he hits. So let's put that film on. Rob Booker, let's go. Again, in-state, Waunakee. Um, you know, One of the other things you'll notice about him is there's a really nice kind of out route there. Route running could be a little cleaned up, but I don't worry about that too much with high school players, because it could be a little cleaned up with like 95% of high school players. It could be a little crisper. It can be crisper for most college players, if we're being honest. Watch our route running last year on the Badgers. So that can get a little crisper. I like the fact that he's not just like a seam guy. They use him on a lot of different routes, right? They run him on crossers, they run him on kind of like these wheel type routes, they run him on seams, they run him on posts. He has pretty good footwork in space. He can turn around defensive backs, even at the high school level, but he can turn around smaller, quicker players with his footwork. Really fluid in space. You can see it, kind of a long strider. Deceptively, like he sometimes it doesn't look like he's moving really quick, but he creates space and distance from the other defensive backs, from the defensive players. So really good athlete in space. You see that right away. Really good hands, natural. Nothing's getting into his chest, his body. It's all hand catch, go up, snatch it, bring it in, control it, and then start moving upfield. Very fluid. A lot of tight ends, a lot of bigger jumbo athletes are clunky, right? They catch it and it fights them a little bit, and then they lose that momentum. They can't catch, turn, run. He has a great ability to catch, turn, north, south, run. I think because that he's going to have a lot of yak ability. He gets up the seam here. He makes a nice little shutter move. The one thing I would say is there's times I feel like he gets tackled a little too easily for his athletic ability, right? There's some one-on-ones on here. You want him to be able to break those tackles. He's more athletic than most of these guys. So, at times you want him to break those tackles. But again, as an athlete, he brings you so much. He's going to have to get better as a blocker, right? He's going to have to get more physical, and that's never going to be the strongest point of his game. Here he is catching a little tight end screen. That's a remnant from the Paul Chryst era. See that's right there. Let's go back to that one. That's a great example of what I'm talking about. You want him to. He needs to break this tackle. And I think this is an area when he gets bigger, a little faster, stronger, he can be better at. Again, great hands. So catch the ball, move upfield, navigates through space, one-on-one, break this tackle. But really good player. Really, really athletic, talented player. Moves well. Again, catches the ball really well. Soft hands, big frame, big target. There he's reaching behind the body. Again, how many tight ends have to kind of reach? They turn, they stumble on a play like that. He can catch it and immediately tuck it and run upfield. That's kind of a rare trait for bigger jumbo athletes. There he is breaking tackles. He certainly has some of that in his game. I think that needs to get a little bit better. I think he needs to get a little more physical at the line of scrimmage, obviously. But again, that's never going to fully be his game. He just has to be adequate there. And then the rest of it, the athletic tools will take over. So Rob Booker, let's turn this over. I think we got a clip with John Garcia Jr. talking about him. Again, a big addition to the Badgers class. Really like this pickup. He brings needed athleticism to the room. I'm going to start there with Rob Booker. 6'6", 215-ish pound kid out of Wisconsin, a high 3-star, offers from really a lot of schools in the Midwest. Iowa's in on him, which is always a nice validating offer for tight ends. What did you think about this commitment and watching his film on Rob Booker?
He is so interesting. This is you talk about light on your feet. It's hard to do that at 6'6", I thought, in principle, and until I watched some tape on the newest Badger, because this kid is like a glider. It's really impressive to watch. Obviously, big-time basketball frame, but on the football field, there's a lot of natural ability here. Right now, kind of just bigger, longer than everybody that he's going up against, but there's some prowess here. There's some really natural instincts after the catch. I mean, how many guys at 6'6" catch designed tunnel screens? Just there's not many of those on planet Earth, but he's one of them. So I think he's a fascinating get. Of course, there's a bunch of, hey, let's just throw it to the big man kind of deal. Let's get in post position, rebounding position, and win at the catch point. He can do that with that size. But I was really intrigued by just the movement. It doesn't look like he's running that fast, but guys aren't catching him. And there's some physicality there too. He is not easy to bring down, which is very intriguing because if that's the case at 210, what is that going to look like at 240, right? Once he gets into the Big Ten for good, strength and conditioning, nutritional program, all that stuff. And then the other thing I really liked here, Ryan, very comfortable moving around. I saw him in the backfield. I saw him split out a bunch, in line, as a wing, basically comfortable moving everywhere. And again, we've talked a lot about modernizing on this pod over the last year or so. This is a very modern tight end that you can isolate and win with, but you could also develop and push towards a higher, more balanced ceiling simultaneously. So I really like this get. And when a kid like this is in your state, getting him in and on board early, it's very important for perception and it'll help you build going forward.
Yeah, and just going back to your point of modernizing, right? Phil Longo coming in. This is just another toy. We're going to talk about Grant Steck in a second. He's another one that committed. This one, Booker feels like a big time upside play. Like this is a guy. Oh, another great example. We talked Tucker Ashcraft in last year's class, more that bigger, physical, high floor guy. I mean,
Yep.
Booker could be a star, and I don't think that's hyperbole if everything comes together here.
100%. The hands are natural. He tracks it well. Again, that size, wingspan, catch radius combination is something you can't teach. And again, there's some instincts and physicality that go along with it. So that's it's not like, oh, this guy moved over from basketball and he's a little soft and you just got to kind of bring him along. A lot of the classic football elements are there. It's just on a modern frame and game. So yeah, if it all comes together, this could be a banner win regardless of where the kid is from. So I really like this get on a lot of fronts. And look, Phil Longo has done a lot with a lot of different body types, but he really loves big bodied receivers that are or receivers and tight ends, pass catchers that are built for that back shoulder ball, win those contested footballs, and this fits that element specifically to a T.
And you mentioned, a kid like this in state, you got to lock those up. Even when, there was a concern when Luke Fickell took over, Phil Longo took over, you were removing this Badger culture. Maybe the in-state prospects wouldn't be as prioritized, for example. I never bought that, but it seems even more so, they're going after, obviously, Donovan Harbor, Corey Smith really hard. They just locked up Booker. Like, they're not going to avoid recruiting in the state of Wisconsin. They're still going to go after that state incredibly hard.
Correct. And look, there's some good talent right now in the state of Wisconsin that they do need to try to lock in early. So yeah, I agree. You don't recruit the state just to recruit it, but this group was never going to ignore the local recruits. It's never happened, and it should never happen at a school like Wisconsin. So Luke Fickell understands that. He did really well in state and locally and semi-locally at Cincinnati. And obviously Phil Longo's been a bit of everywhere, and there's always been a pull locally to him. In North Carolina, you could do so a little bit more frequently than Wisconsin, but you still did it when you didn't have to. So yeah, this will feel more national when the dust settles, but that foundation, those early commitments, they're still going to have very much a local or at least familiar feel.
And the last thing here, I'll go with Booker, then kick it over to you if you have any final thoughts on him or his film or anything we didn't touch on. Phil Longo did an interview when he came here. He talked about, I want to put my athletes, like he basically said, I want to simplify it. I want to put my athletes in space and just let them run. And to me, this feels like a yak tight end, like that yards after catch, get them in space. And tight ends aren't going to be able to stick with them. Or safety, I'm saying linebackers, sorry, aren't going to be able to stick with them. It's just a mismatch.
Right, because now you've got this element of I can go over the top of most linebackers. So if you want to put a longer, maybe rangier defensive back, as I said earlier, there's this instinctive running ability and physicality that Booker also brings that it's just hard to bring him down. And he's also kind of sneaky fast. I don't say that lightly. He just has such a long stride that it doesn't look like he's pumping like the rest of the guys, but he's still running away from them. So yeah, I think this is again a modern let him go kind of player. And as his frame catches up to his game, and the polish starts to come with the route running and lowering his plane with the change in direction and stuff like that naturally comes. I think this is going to be a very intriguing piece to the Phil Longo Wisconsin offensive puzzle.